think about the lecture notes, that is kind of the book. So oftentimes you'll notice that in my lecture, I don't go through line by line what the lecture notes say, especially when we're talking about some of the things like before graphs and some of the details like that. But what I kind of expect is that you'll go through the lecture notes and you'll read them. So what I would do is I would go to the lecture notes and then just start keeping notes for the lecture notes about what it is that the important things that is being highlighted. And when I give you the terms next week, then take the terms and just to go through and just look for those terms. Because for you, those things are going to be the important concepts that I want you to know. Questions about that? You're late. You're late. We just answered that. The answer is that you can bring a one-page sheet. Okay. Other questions? Okay. All right. So the history lectures. Now this is obviously you have to show me by your thumbs how much you watch the history lectures. And you say, yes, I watched them all, to, oh, I watched some of them, to history lectures. What history lectures on YouTube? So show me by your thumbs. Okay, well enough that we could probably go through and talk about. So these are the terms that I kind of gave you. Any of those terms that you want to ask about? Anything in there that sort of strikes out, that stands out and says? Yeah.
I actually have a question about the front and back paper. Can you print it or I can do it?
Say it again.
So like for the sheet music paper that says, can you print it or I can do it?
It can be any way you want. You can do it on microfiche. Yeah, as long as you have as small as you want, you print it out. You can do it by hand, whatever you want. It has to be a regular size piece of paper, right? Not the poster size. Other than that, yeah, write whatever you want. Okay, so if I ask you these terms, would you know? And let's see. How about if I pick one? How about socialized medicine? What's that from? What was it a good term or not good term? Right. Or communism. Yeah. Communism. Yeah. So it was meant to be a bad term. And what was kind of considered socialized medicine? What did they? Well, first off, who coined the term? Multiple choice question. Was it coined by Republicans in Congress, Democrats in Congress, doctors, or insurance companies? I may say Republicans in Congress. Democrats, doctors, insurance companies. Now, no one raised their hand for any of it. So, the answer is doctors. The American Medical Association basically coined the term socialized medicine because they didn't want to have universal health care. Why didn't they want to have Why didn't they want to have the government involved in health care? Yeah, regulation specifically about what? That's okay. What was it? What were the doctors afraid of? If the government got involved in healthcare, what were they afraid of? They were afraid that the government would come through and control how much they get paid. Because they wanted to be able to, and also, so this is where the sacred and profane come in. The sacred is that they wanted to respect the patient-doctor relationship and have it be so that doctors and patients would have that special bond that the government would be involved in. The profane is they didn't want government to come through to sort of say, oh, you've got to go through and this is what we're going to charge you, what we're going to pay you for it. Does the government right now tell, private providers, doctors, how much they're going to pay for like Medicare? Does the government just tell what they're going to pay doctors for Medicare, or can doctors charge Medicare patients what they want? All right, I'm going to go through the slides. We're going to rip through these slides. So, I can give you the quick review of these things. Okay, ready? Speed lecturing. So we talked about this, about what healthcare was like before phones arrived. And estimates are about 50 to 100 million people. What percentage of people have died off after Native Americans died off of disease after phones arrived? Think about 80–90%. So even before kind of the Spanish came into the Southwest United States, they think about 80–90% of Native Americans died. And when they died, smallpox, all these different types of diseases that were rampant in Europe that killed all kinds of people that weren't unknown here. And so people didn't have immunities for them. And so when they came through, they killed a bunch of people. So lots of different types of most infectious diseases at that point. So that's all about the infection, different types of diseases. This is life expectancy. So life expectancy was poor in general, worse if you're a woman, and worse if you're African American. So not surprisingly, throughout the 1800s. Then the next thing was about, well, first off, any questions about what health was like, the state of health back in the 1800s? Essentially, it meant that if you think about the immunological transition, which countries go from most of the deaths being from infectious diseases to most of the deaths being from chronic diseases. Back then, the U.S. was in the infectious disease side. Now, the U.S. is in the chronic disease side. And the change took place now. It comes down to imbalances, is that the theory of health is that you have these imbalances in your body, and so therefore, if someone has a fever, they got red, and so therefore it must be because they have too much blood. So the thing you would do is bleed people. So have you heard of bleeding before? Show me yes, you could. So bleeding was the common thing that they did because that was something that was supposed to relieve the imbalance of too much blood. The part about Washington, I think they gave a little article about Washington, how good Washington were very attentive to him, and so bleeding him, and then the Texans got sicker, so they kept bleeding, and so finally died. So it's a case where, actually, no, that's a case where the more health care you get, the worse off you are. Okay, so different humors in the body, etc. Go through all those. The thing to remember about this, about sort of the way that, because if you ask yourself, well, okay, at this point, I think that most people would say, that's ridiculous, that bleeding was some type of cure. So why is it that it lasted for so long? Why is it that, this is what's unique about health in terms of other things. Like if you take farming, right? What happens if you're using a stupid farming practice and someone finds a better farming practice, a better way to grow corn? What happens? Some person grows a lot of corn. The other people that are not growing a lot of corn look over and they say, oh wait, these people must be doing something right. So then they look at what they do and then they copy it, right? So in health though, that didn't really happen. So why didn't it happen? Because it wasn't very much that healthcare could do back in this period. That's the takeaway from this, is that health couldn't really do things for you. And so as a result, since they don't really know, since they can't really do much for you, is that it's not like that they can go through that they can try different things and see if they work. So for example, bleeding. Does bleeding make you better? No. But at the same time, if they did nothing, they would get better. And so therefore, if you bled someone and they got better, you might conclude, oh, look, it worked. At the same time, that if they don't do anything and the person dies, and they say, oh, that person dies. So the point being is that health is really tough because it's really hard to sort of come up with what works and what doesn't work just by trial and error. Like it is for crops. You can try different things and you can see your success because you see corn grow versus not grow. So you can see that there's a direct correlation that you can observe. But health is not like that. And especially because they didn't really have a scientific method, a way of going through and discovering knowledge. They didn't have like randomized controlled trials. We try this thing for this group and not for that group. And that really doesn't come until the Renaissance hit. They start to look at more about how the body works, and then they start to the scientific method starts to come in like 1700s, 1800s. And so if we think about the main way that we now have health knowledge, which is through randomized controlled trials, doesn't really apply until really late. And even when it does work, they didn't really have very much to do. Like the famous story about how public health started is it starts from England, where they're having a cholera outbreak and all these people are dying, and someone what's his name? Yeah, he goes through and he charts where all the deaths are and notices that they're around a certain well. So he goes and he takes the handle, and then death rates go down. So that's what that must be a trial, right? He did a little experiment to see if you take away access to this water, do death rates go down, and then he did. So that's a case where he was trying doing the type of modern type of thing that we now think of in public health. But it didn't occur until what, 1800s, 1700s? And it was that he was doing 1800s that he was doing this. So it's relatively late. So it meant that when we're talking about health, the type of health care we get throughout the 1800s, it's not like they do a lot for you. And in some cases, they make you worse off. And in some cases, the treatments that they're giving are making you much worse off. Most of the treatments that they give back then, when they start talking about patent medicines, it's a patent medicine. Yeah, I mean, like things that they advertise that they have this elixir that you can buy at the store. In fact, my grandmother, who was born in the 1800s, we were talking about this because she lived in rural Pennsylvania. And rural Pennsylvania, they had a lot of doctors didn't do very much. And so they used to have the medicine people go home and sell medicines. And so they had a special medicine that for babies, for kids, special medicine that she would learn on and people like that. And so, I asked, what is in the medicine? My grandmother was a nurse. I said, what is in the medicine? She goes, oh, alcohol. It was basically whiskey. It was whiskey with a couple of things. But babies bought it. the gums from her in the teeth. So, it was medicine because there was something else in it. It wasn't just pure alcohol, but alcohol was the main food that they used. So, medicine type things are being sold, and that's what people would use because there wasn't a lot of other treatments for things at that point. And so the point of this whole thing is just basically that these type of treatments that we now look upon as strange and barbaric and everything else, they arise because they didn't have a way of testing out things. There wasn't much they did. They didn't really understand how disease works. Right? They don't really understand how the body works. And so they're kind of just in the dark trying different things along the way. Surgery, great example. Now, surgery, why is it that barber always look like that? Because most of the surgeons were barbers. And so, they're showing basically is that they read this with life. But going to surgery was not something that you did by choice. It was like a last resort surgery. All right. So then talk about scientific approach, etc. We go through problems with medicine, knowledge of medicine, etc. So that's the whole point of that. Okay. Next part was basically about what healthcare is like. So this is what it was like. That's what the clinical medicine is like. Now we're going to talk about how the healthcare system runs. And again, health at this point very limited because there's not much you can do. But doctors, through trial and error, were doing some things. And so doctors, I think, they were still valued because they had seen a number of things, they could stop bleedings, they could, but it wasn't like they had a whole lot of things in their arsenal that they could do. The two schools of training back then, the orthodox and the holistic. So the orthodox, they were all into the in, out goes. So basically, they looked at what they're really into looking at poop or feces to sort of see what was in feces and what was in there, because they thought that's the way you could sort of tell what people's health was. I think it's great, like grain cracker thing. The reason that grain crackers were invented because he was really into this, and so he started this whole movement of looking at these health things where they were doing all these bizarre practices. They're all based upon this idea that this food flow out of the body. But the holistic thing, it was all based upon that you wanted to restore balance. Whereas the orthodox, holistic was all about balance. The orthodox were all about being filled out. So physician's job at this point, not to do very much. Here's what type of things they had that they treat people with. But they also use mercury, arsenic, strychnine, things like that. So this is where patent medicines was. Fun fact that the reason we have newspapers is because in the Revolutionary War, shortly after the Revolutionary War, is that there were all these people were printing these little one-sheet things to try to sell them. But it was because patent medicine needed a place to advertise that they started to pay basically these newspapers to basically put their advertisements on. So that's how newspapers became kind of the thing that were cheap, and you had lots and lots of newspapers because they were the main source of advertising. The newspapers died for the most part when the paper newspapers died when the internet came along. Because suddenly advertisers don't need newspapers anymore. But that's not why we had newspapers, because they wanted newspapers as a place to archive. You would go and you pay some money, and then you could sort of follow the poor, medical education. And so the idea of you know, doctors as scientists starts to infiltrate through the 1800s into the U.S. medical education. But for the most part, through the 1800s, it's still pretty much, especially the middle part of the 1800s, it's an apprenticeship type thing, where some group of doctors would say, you pay some money, and that we'll let you follow us around, and that they'll set up these dispensaries. And so dispensaries were places where poor could get treated, and you would let these junior doctors go out there and treat people in these dispensaries. But it wasn't the type of what we think about as medical training now. Okay, Johns Hopkins is the first kind of real medical school in the U.S. So it gets set up because it's sort of following this European type model of trying to be more science-based. And then, gradually what's going to happen is that you're going to have this kind of conflict between the holistic type of medical education and then the more science-based education, the orthodox. So the orthodox becomes, it becomes the kind of European model, and the holistic remains is kind of the more, everyone can be their own doctors, or they can know a lot about medicine, they can treat themselves, etc. And there's not that much difference between the camps in terms of what they can actually do, because even though the science-based ones are what we think of as doctors, medical education doctors now, at that point, they knew some things, but not a lot of things. So it's still, by the end of the 1800s, you're not in a situation where one branch of medicine is much more effective than the other branch of medicine. They're about the same. All right. So just to, so where we sit at the end of the 1800s, medical practice is kind of in disarray because you don't really have there's no consistency in how people get trained. There's no kind of way of going through and certifying who's a doctor, who's not a doctor. And also, it can be really hard to make a living as a doctor, especially in the rural area. So I mean, if you think about back then, if you're a rural doctor, if you're in Planada, and you're trying to be a doctor in Planada, how many patients are you going to see a day? Well, not a lot, because it's not a very big population center. And if you have to go out where people are, is that then you're going to be only traveling 5 or 6 miles to see each individual. So the number of people you can see in a day is really, really small. So it means that it's hard for doctors to make a living back then, because just it was too much time to see them. Doctors in cities had it better because they could see more people. So that the type of practice that we now think of it as the standard type of way, where there's a waiting room and people can sit down and wait in the waiting room, doctor see everyone. That's sort of arises in this part of the cities, but in rural areas it wasn't. So rural areas then and now still suffer from the fact that there's such great distance and such small population bases, is that they just can't have the same type of concentration of services as they do in urban areas. Okay. So they have, key thing that we get from this is that you've got, doctors, independent practices, independent people. You've got dispensaries, that's the ones that are being run by students. You then have mental asylums, and like a lot of states and counties sort of ran their own mental asylums. And as you can imagine back then, not nice places, right? Not places where you want to live up. They were essentially was that somebody was being crazy, and crazy could just mean a lot of women were being crazy. Is that then they would just send it to these asylums, and that's where they were. So California has an old history of mental institutions. I think that Rio was the last one that closed down. It was probably in the 1970s closed down. And that it was known as a horrible place, absolutely horrible place. So mental institutions have traditionally not been like great places to get care. They're basically just places to put people. Hospitals then arise not as places to similar. Hospitals do not arise as places where people can get better. Hospitals arise as places where they put the poor who are sick. So if you think about the 1900s, especially in big cities, you've got all these people who are dying from infectious diseases, and you have poor people who are dying, and then just dying in the streets. Rich people tend to not like that, and you see poor people dying in the streets from infectious diseases because they don't want to get died of infectious diseases. And so these cities start becoming hospitals. But the hospitals then aren't, they're not places that we think of now as hospitals. They're basically just places where people go who are sick to get them off the street, and mostly poor people. Rich people, or people with incomes, they got treated at home, so they would just stay at home, which is back then much better chance of survival if you stay at home than if you went to a hospital. So I think the estimates were like 75% of people who were in the hospital died. So it was not someplace that there was not treatments going on in the same way that we think about it. It was basically just a way to get people off the streets. All right, hard to keep living as a doctor, we talked about that. Medical education, talked about that. So, government in this stage, what's their involvement in healthcare? Not very much. And the government started to threaten to get involved with patent medicines because a lot of the patent medicines that were being sold were killing people. They mercury, arsenic, things like that. So government started threatening to be involved. But what you see with healthcare over and over again is that the government will threaten to get involved in things, and then the industry says, oh, no, don't get involved. We'll monitor it ourselves. So this occurs with American Medical Association. It arises because people are afraid that they're going to go through, doctors are afraid the government's going to come and start regulating. And so they say, oh, no, don't do that. We'll regulate ourselves. So even now, if you look at within the county, who is it that certifies doctors? Well, there's a panel, there's a group that certifies doctors when you come to the county. And that group are doctors. Right? So doctors certify each other. Even though it's the county's responsibility to kind of make sure that, that I can't just go and start practicing as a doctor, but the county does, that they have people from doctors who go through and so is that good? That all these institutions like pharmacies, doctors, hospitals, everything, all regulate themselves? And what's the good side of that? What's the good side of it? Well, that's from their standpoint. From a public standpoint, what's the rationale for why it is that you might have doctors regulate themselves rather than having county officials regulate? Because county officials may not know about medicine, right? And so therefore, it's this question of how can you tell if a doctor is being negligent? And the argument is that, well, someone like you and I, we can't tell because we don't know what's like in your body. But other doctors do. So therefore, that's why they want to regulate themselves, and they know what it's like. And the argument is that they care about the reputation so much, is that they'll weed out all the bad doctors because they don't want to have these bad doctors in there. So that's true. The downside of it is that they can weed out people who they don't like as well, who are not bad doctors. And so throughout the 1800s and 1900s, the type of doctors that they would weed out were doctors who wanted to go to a universal health care. So what you also see is that the self-regulation of healthcare professionals as well means that, if a doctor comes in and says, I want to start a clinic, and I'm going to start a clinic whereby everyone just pays a certain amount of money, I'll provide all the health care, which is basically universal care. That's what outreach and those stuff. And if the other doctors don't want that, then they can not certify the doctor, but not because the person's not a doctor, but just because they don't want to have that type of health care competition in the county. So that starts to occur throughout the 1800s and 1900s, is this sense that as there's more and more push to get healthcare, to get everyone to have access to healthcare, there's pushback from the medical establishment. And the medical establishment, because they are regulating themselves, is that they can actually kick out doctors from the region if they don't, not for medical reasons, not because they're bad doctors, but just because if they don't like the type of healthcare system that they're in, as one that threatens the structure that they have. Okay, so turn of the century, healthcare is at a crossroads, right? You've got these two schools, Orthodox, and you've got the holistic. You've got medical, the Orthodox ones, they're starting to become more science-based, and that they're looking at Europe and how Europe has developed. So in the US, if you're an Orthodox school, and you want, if you're on the Orthodox training, and you need to find scientists, where do you find scientists? Back in the late 1800s, where do you find scientists? You're sitting in a place where you find scientists. Universities, right? Universities is where you find scientists. And so, as more and more medicine, for the Orthodox medicine, starts to become more science-based, they start to look around and say, well, where are we going to find these chemists? Where are we going to find biomedical scientists and things like that? And the place we find these universities. And so that's the point where you start seeing universities become involved with medical training, because they weren't before that. Right? I mean, Hopkins set up a medical school, but it wasn't a university. It was just, they happened to hire the same people as universities, but only because they had a ton of money. But for the most part, most medical schools start to become associated with universities because they need the sciences. So like even now, most medical schools are closely associated with the biomedical faculty. Whatever medical school you look at, is that you'll see a lot of that the biomedical faculty will be the ones who basically done. Why is that? Well, because like in a medical program, you need someone to teach you anatomy. And so how much, for medical students, how much anatomy do you need? You don't need a full-time person to teach anatomy to teach medical school, right? When I first started teaching in medical school, I was teaching an MPH program that also it was within a medical school. And so they came to me and they said, when I first started, they said, well, you're going to teach the medical students, and you're going to teach the second year medical students, and you'll have 3 hours. I thought, okay, 3 hours a week to teach second year medical students about public knowledge. I can do that. So I laid out this course, and I really laid out this course for over like 15 weeks, how I was going to teach them about public knowledge, everything. So I bring the syllabus to my head department and say, okay, I've got this now. And he looks at this and he says, oh, no, it's not 3 hours a week. It's 3 hours for the year. And now it's down to 2 hours because we gave another hour to the epidemiologist. So I went in there and I talked to them for 2 hours about public knowledge. What is it that you can teach secondary medical students about public knowledge in 2 hours? 0. They don't care about it. There's absolutely no relevance to what they're doing. So, what did I do the other 98% of my time? Well, I taught medical things. And so that's where medical schools work. You need people to come and teach very specific things in very limited time. But then the question is, what do you do with them the other 90% of the time? So in the university, they go and teach undergraduates and graduate students, and then come over and teach their second medical program and go back. But if you're trying to set a medical school where you're just a medical school, then how do you get all these different people? You either have to have a lot of money to hire all these different people and have to sit around, or you get grants. So a lot of medical programs then develop because they started having all these people sitting around who were going to go teach just 10 hours a year to these students. And what are they going to do the other 90% of the time? And so they do research. So as a result of this type of university kind of linking, it meant that universities had people who could come in, but at the same time, it also meant that you had a whole bunch of people who had other time to do other things. And so that's where the undergraduate programs arise, that's where the so universities really benefit from having this type of thing, this type of medical education. But anyways, that's where they are. 1900s, you have this crossroad, you still have this holistic in the science space, it's kind of going through. So first thing that happened in there is that, the debate ends. The debate ends because during the 1900s, the American Medical Association says, we're going to do a report, and that's going to recommend what medical education should look like. And they got someone in who was basically in an Orthodox school and named Flexner, and Flexner comes out and says, well, the only medical education that's worth anything is the Orthodox school. And so basically, the holistic school is gone. So at that point, then, the holistic school just disappears from medical education, and everything from then on becomes just science-based. And so that's how we get our current type of medical education, is because the Flexner report comes along and wipes out the holistic way and just says, from now on, science is the way to go. They're coinciding with the rise of science as we think of it now. So it was probably the right call. But it was also self-serving, because it meant that suddenly the only type of medical education you can have then is this sort of virgin science-based medical education, as opposed to more holistic. Okay, this is also the point where suddenly health insurance rises. So one question you might ask is, well, why didn't we have health insurance before? Why was there no need for health insurance before the 1900s? That is, why didn't people in the 1800s have health insurance? And the answer is because they couldn't and so, you basically had a pay-as-you-go system where if you had money, you could afford a doctor. But if you didn't have money, then there's usually people in the family who knew how to treat you, and there was, a holistic method was something for which many people could learn. And so it was more just general type of health knowledge in the community. So it meant that, that for the most part, they just weren't as dependent on doctors, and that especially there was no high-tech hospitals, nothing like that. It only becomes in the 1900s that suddenly healthcare they start to do more for you. That suddenly there's a need to kind of, get more healthcare. And healthcare, who needs healthcare? Well, old people need healthcare, but that doesn't rise for that. Who else needs healthcare in the 1900s? People who get hurt a lot. Who gets hurt a lot? Workers in factories, lumberjacks, and things like that. And that these people are all skilled workers. So, when you have skilled workers, that means that some employers really care about their workers getting hurt, because if their workers, before the 1900s, if a worker got hurt and he wasn't a skilled worker, just bring someone else in and do his job. But now suddenly, as more and more people start to get jobs where they're skilled, because you're doing more manufacturing jobs, more kind of things that require skills, is that now suddenly employers don't want these people to be injured, and they also, if they do get injured, they want them to come back. So it's actually because of the fact that we have this need for skilled workers that you suddenly see all these different people, all these different kind of healthcare insurance plans arising. And they mostly arise for employers who are trying to get their workers to get healthcare kind of back to work as soon as possible. So that's where it kind of arises. At the same time, this is where we start to see national calls for healthcare. So, the first kind of what we now think of as universal healthcare was in Germany, Kaiser's Germany in 1883, and that what they did in Germany back in 1883 is they basically said everyone has a right to healthcare. So they gave universal access. They said everyone can access healthcare. And so, there starts to be calls for that here as well. Why? Well, because there were so many German immigrants into the U.S. during that period. especially up in Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, all those upper areas up there, they had more German speakers than they had English speakers in this period. And so they, that they come with this idea that, well, yes, we should have this type of socialized medicine, this national health insurance. And so there starts to be this push for it. And so this push kind of goes along where it's gaining momentum. The American Medical Association at this point isn't that much against it because they, so there's not really much opposition, and then it falls apart. Why? What kills it? What kills the movement in the 19-teens for universal? World War I, right? Suddenly universal health care that started by the Germans, by the Kaiser, is not something that the US wants to support. And so it gets canceled just primarily because it was associated with Kaiser's Germany, World War I. And since the US was fighting the Germans in World War I, is that it dies. So that's the first, so this would be the first time, not the last time, the universal health care comes out almost 50%, and it doesn't. The Spanish flu hits in 1918. Spanish flu more deadly than COVID? I would say more deadly than COVID. Yeah, it's hard to say because it's more deadly for young people. Right? It kind of kill. So the Spanish flu tended to differ from COVID in that the Spanish flu killed youth, right? It killed young people who were healthy, and primarily it's because, as I understand it, was because what the Spanish flu did is it just caused this hyperimmune response, and so people who were young and healthy had a stronger immune response, so they would be more likely to die from it than someone who was older but had a weaker immune response. And the Spanish flu also, just in case you're interested, it kind of differed from COVID as well, in that the Spanish flu would come through, and in 6 weeks it would be gone. So you didn't really, you had some school closures, you had mask mandates, and all the same type of things, and also resistant to mask mandates back then, resistant to school closures. So a lot of the same things that we saw in COVID happened back in the Spanish flu. But the difference was that the Spanish flu tended to come and go. It came in waves, it came back. There was a wave that kind of hit in the early 1980s, and then it kind of went away, and then it was dangerous later on. So it went in waves, but at the same time, it wasn't like COVID where it just pretty much here. And it kind of goes up and down a little bit, but it doesn't sort of go away like the Spanish flu, at least it hasn't so far. So public health at this point, or medicine, kind of jumps into action to try and figure out what's going on with this. And because you suddenly have all this science-based type of looking at health and medicine, it goes through that, it kind of causes what we now think of as like the CDC as the primary, the premier kind of infectious disease control center in the world, sort of starts at this period because they're trying to look at the Spanish flu and figure out what's going on. So the way that it went through to kill, the way that it went through and impacted healthcare then is that after the Spanish flu left, is that public health in general, right, public health as we know it now, becomes much more science-based than it was before. So before that, public health was really just focused on trying to keep people who were infectious on boats to be quarantined. So it was doing sort of that type of thing. After the Spanish flu, as a result of the Spanish flu, public health becomes kind of synonymous with more what the CDC kind of does, right? Which is to try and look at infectious diseases, try to figure out how to get vaccines for infectious diseases, all those things. Start to become core public health as a result of this. Just also interestingly, after the Spanish flu left, is that there was a decrease in trust in government. Because even though, at this stage, you look and you think, oh, well, the Spanish flu caused public health to become more science-based, which is good. Right? At the time, the public saw it public health has failed because it didn't stop this thing. And so therefore, sort of trust in government kind of fell in the 1920s because of this. Okay, let's see. Depression hits in 1929. Depression lasts for really until World War II. So the U.S. goes into depression in 1929, and then basically 25 to 45% unemployment, and people who were kind of did have jobs, they oftentimes they didn't have enough to eat, didn't have enough income. There's all the different stories that come out about the Great Depression kind of occurred in this point when the country goes into a horrendous economic fall. It's also a period where communism arises in this country. So communism, Russia becomes communist after World War I. That's where the Tsar gets kicked out and killed in World War I, and communism sort of takes over. And so at the time, communism was seen as going to be the way that workers regained power over the wealthy. And the depression hits, and that's what essentially comes down is that all these people are looking at that the depression was caused by these wealthy bankers, which it kind of was, caused by these wealthy bankers, and that they're all still living fine, and people are suffering in the street. So communism starts to become very, very much a popular kind of notion of people among workers. So this comes out later on because when you start doing looking into different people's communist past in the 1950s, is that they find a lot of people that were calling themselves communists in the 1930s because things were so bad and people were for communism. So from a healthcare standpoint, right, Roosevelt takes over in 32. Roosevelt comes through and says, got to do something. Sees that, that civil unrest is getting more of a problem, that people might start going to rioting, country might go to communism. So Roosevelt tries a number of different things. And one thing he does is introduce Social Security. So Social Security is therefore aimed at these types of groups, right? Elderly, unemployed, etc. Not all unemployed, but some unemployed, to get to basically borrow benefits. So at the time, Roosevelt also wanted to include healthcare as well. So this is sort of the second incarnation of the attempt to universal care, is that Roosevelt wants to go through and include as part of Social Security that you get rights to healthcare benefits. And this time it's opposed by the American Medical Association. So this starts the American Medical Association basically, 50, 60, 70, 80-year campaign against having universal health care. And as I said, they didn't want to have universal health care because they didn't want to control this. This is where Blue Cross arises. So Blue Cross and Blue Shield arise there. So Blue Cross is about hospital care. And the idea being is that you pay a certain amount into a fund, and that fund will then cover your hospitalizations. Notice that it didn't include private physician payment. Why didn't it include private physician payments? Because the American Medical Association didn't want to limit what doctors would charge patients. So therefore that was separate. Blue Shield kind of arises in as a way of paying physicians, but at the same time, the American Medical Association kind of agrees with it, but only because physicians are on board. So they sort of thought, okay, so insurance itself, if you think about that from a physician standpoint, is insurance a good thing? Well, yes, it's a good thing because you want to be paid for your services, and if someone gets sick and suddenly can't work, they can't pay for your insurance, they can't pay for your services. So therefore, insurance allows that kind of to happen. It allows them to still get paid for treating people when they get sick and can't work. So from a physician standpoint, they like the idea of insurance. What they don't like is they don't like the idea of having limited the payments. So how do you get an insurance system where you don't limit the payments? Well, you have your physician control it. You can control what the payments are as a physician. So therefore, physicians went along with this because physicians were running it, were determining what the payments were going to be, so they never had to worry about the government coming in and trying to set what the payments were going to be. So it's this control of physicians wanting to keep control of their payment system, which kind of keeps going through history. Every time there's a call for universal health care, is that it gets opposed by physicians, because universal health care means everyone gets health insurance from the government. And so the question is, how do physicians still keep the ability to charge what they want if the government is coming through and saying, and deciding how much people can pay? So they keep on opposing all of it. All right, so let's see, go through that. So World War II hits. World War II hits in unemployment this way. Larger companies like Kaiser Shipyards over in Richmond, they expect greatly because they're now, everything is now more. And so Kaiser expanded, and so they have over 100,000 employees. And so Kaiser now, being from Germany originally, likes this idea of giving the workers health insurance. And so Kaiser starts to offer health insurance to healthcare plans to the workers. So all 100,000 of these workers then have these health plans. Well, World War II ends, and Kaiser is left with, they have 100,000 people they were employing. It's going to go down to 15,000, 10,000, whatever. And so they have this whole health infrastructure. So Kaiser's facing this question of, well, what do? Do they basically just close down all the healthcare infrastructure, or do they offer to the public? So Kaiser at this point says, well, let's just start offering this to the public. But it is the same type of, it's the basics of what Kaiser is today is still then, which is that they're going to, doctors aren't salary. So that's different than most other places, doctors aren't salary. And then, you pay a certain amount. There's all this emphasis on prevention, because that's just like there is now. And then you have a doctor's group, and you have the health insurance group, and that they're technically not the same, but they have a relationship where they only benefit from each other. Okay, so understand the difference between Kaiser. So Kaiser's managed care. It's the first sort of large, it's not the first managed care, not the first kind of HMO, it's the first large one. Goes through there. So by the end of this then, the conclusion is that by 1945, so the end of World War II, is that you suddenly have medical practice is much more organized, medical training is much more organized than it was. So before, it was just this two schools and people kind of being trained by groups of physicians. By the end of 1945, is that we have what we now call modern kind of medical training. The other thing that happens during this period is that doctors become, as the physicians do, they start, and as science starts to take over medicine, it means that people like me and you can't really understand as much about what's going on. So you lose kind of the ability of these people at home to kind of treat people, like to be holistic type of healers. Instead, you're relying upon this type of specially trained type of people who are going to deliver health care. So that means that you now have an agency relationship. So this idea of an agency relationship arises from this point, because as doctors get more powerful, more knowledge, is that they start to, becomes harder for us to understand whether what they're doing is a good job or not. That's the principal agent problem. So the whole agency relationship in health doesn't really exist in 1900, but by 1945 it's definitely. This is also where the doctors all very like this when they're even in general practice, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to project to you is that they are the holders, the high priests who hold the knowledge, and that you have to really trust them because of it. Also, by this point, hospitals have changed. So remember hospitals, 1800s, just places where people went to die. By the end of the 1800s, hospitals are places where, by 1945, hospitals can do things. And so, they start to become more, more surgical centers, more kind of high-tech type of things start becoming hospitals. So hospitals become kind of a focus. And so now doctors who are, out there working in the community, down here in Yosemite Avenue, they have to rely upon the hospital. They can't afford to have their own surgical center, and they can't afford to have all the other kind of high-tech type things. The hospital can. So the hospital becomes now the hub, and the doctors then, are the ones who have to rely upon the hospital. But it also means that the hospital, because they can't, have patients, they can't sign up patients as part of their, of what they do. They have to rely upon doctors. So it means that hospitals now are in this weird position whereby doctors need them because they're going to be high-tech centers. At the same time, they have to attract doctors because doctors have the patients. So if you're a place with, down in Fresno where you have St. Edmunds, Community Hospital, and a couple other ones now, it means that they're all kind of competing for doctors. They're trying to get these doctors to kind of come to them so that their doctors, they'll bring their patients with them. Doctors make a good living by this point. So as their prestige rises, salaries rise as well. So by the 1945s, doctors are now up there among the highest paid in the US. And medical education looks like it does now. Okay. Continuing with the fire hydrant approach to history. 1945 to 1970, three big things occurred. One is the third failure to adopt universal health care. The second one is what's referred to as the rising medicine. So during the 1940s, 1970 period, it's sort of seen as the golden age of medicine. And then the other thing that happens is that government gets into it. So up until 1945, the government provided GIs with healthcare, but the government wasn't really providing healthcare to people. And once the World War II ended, then the government stopped providing healthcare to people. So at the end of World War II, now this debate starts about what should the U.S. do with healthcare? And because what was happening around the world at this point is that the other countries were starting to adopt universal healthcare. So this is where the UK kind of comes to adopt universal healthcare. This is what France does. Germany already had it from the 1800s. Canada adopts universal healthcare at this point. So all these different countries adopt universal healthcare at this point. And so the debate is raging within the US about whether or not to adopt universal healthcare. Truman, president at the time, wants universal healthcare, is very supportive of it. Main opposition comes from the Medical Association. Doesn't want universal healthcare. Doesn't want the government to come to a set, provide health insurance. So American Medical Association, this is where they come up with their socialized medicine campaign. Because at this point also the U.S. is starting to become bad about Congress. And so what the Medical Association does is that they sort of say, socialized, if the government controls medicine and you have socialized medicine, then you're just like in Russia. The government's telling people what to do, they're losing all food and things like that. So this is where the battle is lost by Truman. So when Eisenhower takes office, then the healthcare bill just dies. So that's our third attempt at the universal healthcare fails during this period. Even though most of the rest of the industrialized world at this point adopts it, the U.S. doesn't do it. So I go through different type of reasons for why it didn't pass. It's kind of complicated because, ironically, you think that labor unions would be very strong for history. They want universal healthcare. They didn't want universal healthcare because what they wanted is that they wanted to basically negotiate healthcare for their workers. So it meant that labor unions, which you think would be like all for universal healthcare, actually were not very enthusiastic for it because they wanted Chrysler, they want American auto workers on strike right now. One of the things that they argue for is the return in healthcare benefits like they used to, because that was something that they could do that the union. Let's see, institutional reasons, yep, so you can understand that, ideological. Tax aversion, the US tends to dislike taxes more than other countries. But the other thing is just the rise of private insurance, because as the US, what was it? I read that during the 1930s increase, the US had 80% of the industrial output of the world in the US, which is staggering. And so it meant that the US was basically going through this manufacturing boom. And so companies really need workers. And so one way that companies could go ahead and entice workers was through health insurance. So this is the point where companies start to offer health insurance as part of their employment. If you think about it, why would companies be involved in offering health care to people and their families? That's not something that necessarily companies wanted to do. Is that, and the only reason they did is because they didn't want to raise pay, and it was easier to go through to offer health care insurance. In other words, that because health care insurance was not expensive, hospitalizations at this time wasn't really very expensive, so it wasn't a big cost. It was just sort of seen as something they could do to entice workers, and labor unions were going through and renegotiating it. But the result was that in the 1950s is that the majority of people who were working get health insurance from their employers. So in a way, the Congress and the federal government can say, we don't have to worry about health care, about offering universal health care, because the private sector is coming through. So the private sector comes through, for the most part, for lots of workers, they're offering health insurance. So if you ask, well, who's left out of this? Well, who's left out of the elderly because they're not working, and also people who are poor. So that's where the government comes in there, right? So the government comes in because it's going to offer Medicare and Medicaid at this point kind of come in. Where Medicare was because the government saw that that someone needed to offer health care to the elderly, and Medicaid because the government needed someone needed to offer it to the poor, quote unquote, not all poor, just certain sections, classes of the poor. So government comes in at this point to offer health insurance to these groups who didn't have health insurance. Did the American Medical Association, were they okay with this? I think the American Medical Association, the doctors groups were okay with the government coming through and doing this. Yeah, because they could, pay for it anyways. Right? The elderly most of them couldn't pay for it, so it just means the government's coming through and telling them, oh, we'll pay for these people. So they were like, woohoo, we're all for this. So they weren't opposed, they weren't enthusiastic, but they weren't opposed to it like they were just a universal health care, because this is basically just providing funding for people who couldn't afford health care. And so medical hospitals and doctors, they're all for that. What they don't like is they don't like the government.
Good morning, good evening, Kevin, good afternoon. We got a banger for y'all today, baby. Doc told me to pull his stream up. He was talking trash, hey, dude. What? On Valorant, when CS2 is literally launching, skull emoji, bro. I'm fucking dead, literally. He's gonna lose his gunfight.
Re-rotating. Re-rotating. We have 3 at C.
This is my teammate, bro. Like, this is the guy I'm trying to play Counter-Strike with. That was, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not trying to exaggerate. Witness. Dude, that was literally awful.
30 bomb, I got you.
You're not getting 30 kills.
Tatman Army, appreciate you. I don't mean to be the guy that likes all the attention, but sure, I'll try my best.
He's not getting 1 kill this round either, so. Yo, nice try, Doc. Nice try, man.
Last player standing.
Yeah, nice try, bro.
Land on your right side.
He should get one kill here.
The fuck is that thing?
Like KD. CS2 lunch party and Doc told me to pull up his. Get mad at his team here? There's no fucking way.
And he used to work in the hospital.
Right, he's not gonna. You're not forcing. Stop. I'm saving. Save. He's 0-4. Oh my god. Save! Is he just
gonna
gonna
finish eating yet, Doc? I know.
If he pushes this, he's gonna die. He's gonna die, bro.
Hey, look.
And he would turn out and he'd send the bill off to Medicare. And the Medicare would pay me money and he'd give it to the doctor. And then sometimes the doctor paid me.
You want to?
There's a lot of money that we send off the bill for it. And sometimes not. It's like very easy things. But that's the way it worked. It also meant that like if a doctor came through and said, we really, really want this new type of machine, is that they would just buy it and we would send Medicare the bill and say, here it is, and they just build it into the Medicare payments. Every person would get an additional extra payment to pay for that machine. So it meant that hospitals could basically buy all the different type of things that they wanted to because Medicare was paying for it. As long as Medicare didn't come through and try to screw it down on the price, that's what we did. Okay, well, we'll stop there. And we'll finish up next time. Go watch the tapes. We'll do that next time.